Welcome to Frickety Frack. We do talk back. Thank you for joining us in our first episode of this new particular season.
Hello, my name is Patrick, and I'm Frack.
Hello, my name is Jeff, and I'm Frick. Frickety Frack, We Do Talk Back is a show airing once a week where we will discuss different aspects of fandom and how they relate to the gospel. For this particular season of the podcast, we will be going through the miniseries Kingdom Come and how we see lessons from the issues that connect to the teachings of the Bible. And just as many as you are, we are also fans of other things as well. So once we finish Kingdom Come, we'll be going in a different direction and tackling other topics ranging from anime, comics, video games, movies, and anything else that tickles our fancy. And we did get the name of Frickety Frack from our father who dubbed us Frickin' Frack since we were kids. So Patrick, why Kingdom Come?
With Kingdom Come, it's for me, it's like one of those. It's one of the first Elseworlds tales that I read, reading comics, and the main character is a pastor. I mean that in itself is amazing. So that really connects to me in that way, and it's one of these series that shows such a great understanding of heroes and villains and society. And one of the things that I love about it, and this really kind of started my love for this, of comic book superhero stories, but you see it from the perspective of the non-heroes and how they're related, and how they relate to the heroes that they see. Because when we read comics, we only see how the world is viewed by Superman or the Flash or Batman or any of them, and then we see, and so very rarely do we see how other people are, see superheroes in return. And there's a couple comic book series that do that, like Astro City is well known for it. But so we wanted to tackle Kingdom. I think tackling Kingdom Come is a good thing for us. What about you, Jeff? Why would you want to do Kingdom Come?
Honestly, it's easily in my top 5 favorite comic books series of all time. When talking more about like a confined run that with a definitive beginning and end, this is just I love this book. I love everything about it. I love the message. I love the story. I love the art. I love the characters. It's 100% phenomenal. And it's and as for those of you that are, you know, maybe you're more seasoned comic book veterans or comic book enthusiasts, um, you with the way our culture has gone, with like the uptake in superhero movies, and more people are being getting more interested in the sources that's creating these movies. And so over the years, I've had several people that are like, hey, I really enjoy these superhero movies. What is there something I can read? Is there something you can let me borrow that I can kind of see if maybe I want to start collecting or that sort of thing? It's happened to me quite a bit. I'm sure it's happened to you as well, Pat. But Kingdom Come is one of my always go to when somebody comes to me, specifically if somebody comes to me and say, I want to read superhero comic books. Granted, there are so much more comic books out there other than superhero comic books, but because of the way our culture is today, superheroes are predominant in our comic book culture. Um, so it's the most common thing is because I always do ask a little bit more about, like, well, what are you wanting to read? Are you wanting to read superhero stuff? Are you wanting to read more genre independent stuff, or are you wanting to read stuff about the big guns, the DC or Marvel and that sort of stuff? And Kingdom Come is always on my list of you should read this.
Mhm.
um
Yeah, it's usually
and
a go-to for me. And when I worked at the comic book store, I recommended it quite a few times to people, to read Kingdom Come.
And so yeah, so there's just, I mean, you can't really ask for a much better team up in terms of putting a book together than Mark Waid and Alex Ross. Um, I very, very rarely do I not like something that Mark Waid wrote when he's the lead author. I love his stuff. Like he did a, is he still doing it? I'm not 100% sure, but he did a run on. They did a reboot of Archie comics that modernized Archie a little bit. It's phenomenal. It's better. It's honestly, it's better than the Riverdale show, but that's not our beat. But it was great. It was really good. Enjoyed the characters and love the storytelling. It's just the Mark has a phenomenal way of telling a story, and you can tell, you can hear stories about how he is in person. And Patrick and I have actually had the opportunity to actually have met him. We've met him at a comic book convention a few years back, and he has a genuine love for these characters. And when you see the way that when you read what he writes, you can tell he loves writing about these characters, and he just has a really great grasp of them. Uh, so that's just when it comes down to Kingdom Come. It's the big thing for me is that we can't do a podcast like this and not talk about one of my go-to books. Like this is like, here, read. It's like if any of the people that have asked me about what I should read, they can rest assured to tell you I've told them to read this book.
Yeah. And so just before we get any further, just so you know, Kingdom Come is available at your local comic book store. And uh, uh, you could probably order it through Amazon. But with the way the economy is going, buying it from your local comic book store is your best bet. But if you don't have one near you, you can order it through Amazon. Or you can get it digitally either on the Kindle or Comixology. It comes from the same place, so it doesn't really matter. But anyway, so you can get those there. Uh, Actually, through a Christmas present from Jeff, I actually have this comic miniseries 3 different ways. I have it digitally. I have it. I had the trade paperback that I got many, 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 many years ago, and then Jeff just recently got me a full collection of the 4 issues individually as a Christmas gift, and so I'm excited about those. And so during this time of studying uh, Kingdom Come, we'll be sharing screenshots, but it'll most likely be from the digital unless Jeff gets daring with a scanner or something and uses on his individual issues.
Yeah, it's going to be digital.
Yeah, so we'll take screenshots from the comic themselves and share a few of those these scenes with that. So let's get into the synopsis of this issue. And so we're on chapter 1 of Kingdom Come, and I don't know if it's on the individual, because I actually haven't read the individual issues. I've only ever read it through the trade or now digitally. Is it titled Strange Visitor?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So chapter 1, Strange Visitor. So the issue starts off with an apocalyptic vision from Wesley Dodds, the Sandman of JSA, talking with his pastor, Norman McKay. And so he shares these visions, and then Norman, he starts reading 1 Corinthians chapter 15 to him, and then that transitions to Wesley Dodds' funeral, where Norman expresses that it was in very low attendance. He reminisces about his time with Wesley, about sharing stories of his past adventures, and how Dodd didn't care for the new generation of heroes. Human achievement has stalled, and the heroes of the past are, and once again, air quotes with memorialized with a fast food chain and tacky costumes. As he leaves that restaurant, we see a yellow and red streak head towards a battle taking place in the middle of a crowded area where there is significant collateral damage. once again, the air quote heroes fight, but they have no discretion and no care for those around them. They stop because of the disaster in Kansas. Norman afterwards, Norman gives a fire and brimstone type of sermon, which was not comforting to his parishioners. Uh, During this, he meets the Spectre, and like the Christmas Carol, they uh, end up jumping around time to see how history unfolds for the world and the superhero community around it. The Spectre takes Norman to see Superman, who's working in a holographic farm, and Diana, the Wonder Woman, comes to him, urging him to come back because the superhero community will follow him. He says no, but looks at the news feed to see how the world is faring, and it is not good. We also get glimpses of some of the other heroes like the Flash, Hawkman, Green Lantern, Aquaman, and a good portion of Batman. And so, because of Magog's disaster, the other heroes stop caring about collateral damage even more than they already have and don't care about it whatsoever. And they start a fight on a bridge. And then all of a sudden, we see a red and blue blur comes around, stopping everything and saving everyone. Norman hopes that this means things are turning around, but he gets another vision of the disaster still to come.
Yeah, so there's there's just so much that we can discuss about Kingdom Come, and even in just this first issue, it's this first issue is focused so much around Norman, and him being just this normal regular guy. It's like I like that it's a little similar to the My Hero Academia world. There are children and grandchildren of superheroes now in the earth, and there's a descriptor in here at one point where it's just like the faceless thousands, that there's so many of them that it has stunted human achievement. It's like they talk about in this book that there's they don't do the Olympic Games anymore, the Nobel Prizes are done, because there are just so many superheroes now that like anything a human does is just considered quote unquote boring. And actually, in all honesty, that's something that's we'll talk about and discuss when we get into a little bit further with My Hero Academia, because there are so many people with quirks and that sort of stuff. But when it comes to this world, it's and then the funny thing, the thing that's hard with their society is that you know you can't even really tell who the villains and who the heroes are. um so there's a great little scene in here when the battle that's breaking out before the catastrophe in Kansas is happening. I just want to read this because it's so pointy. Like there's just disaster after disaster, like these buildings are being destroyed, lives are in danger, and Norman is witnessing all of this. And in fact, at some one point, he goes and helps and protects this little girl who is scared. And but I just want to read this. The world Wesley left is filled not with his heroes, but with their children and grandchildren. They number the nameless thousands, progeny of the past, inspired by the legends of those who came before, if not the morals. They no longer fight for the right, they fight simply to fight. Their only foes, each other. The superhumans boast that they've all but eliminated the supervillains of yesteryear. Small comfort. They move freely through the streets, through the world. They are challenged but unopposed. They are, after all, our protectors. And so it's just this great writing that he's putting in here, that Mark puts in here, that's just absolutely phenomenal and very poignant for the times that we're getting into, where there's it's like we're becoming so dependent on different things and different like wanting people wanting to become more and more dependent on the government, and dependent on other people other than just themselves, being self-sufficient. And um, it's a poignant lesson for us to remember that it's just like this is kind of what happens when you stop, when you put all of your um, dependency on others instead of you being able to go and make the achievement and take care of it yourself. um, and so it's just a great book, and it's so deep. um, and there's so much about it. um, and honestly, one of my favorite scenes in the book, in this particular issue, is when Diana comes to visit Superman, and as he's in the fortress, he's working on a farm, and we don't know what disaster has happened yet when this has happened, but we see a farm, and Norman's like, I see a Midwestern farmland, but that's not possible. So again, it's like I just love these little teases that happen when you're reading this issue. That's like you don't know what's happened, but it's like you're getting an idea, and you see Superman, like he's just wearing overalls, he's kind of scruffy looking, um, and then Wonder Woman shows up, and she says to him, "Hello, Clark," which everybody knows Superman's secret identity. It's like if you're not living underneath a rock, his secret identity is Clark Kent. Well, when she says Clark, his response is a death stare that would, you know, melt the ice caps. That's
Which
how,
he could do.
yeah, yeah, and he could. But yeah, his look is just like, you do not call me that. And so then she follows up with Kal, which is part of his Kryptonian name, Kal-El. And so it's just, uh, so yeah, it's just this great scene that I just absolutely love. And there is one little thing too that I want to talk about very quickly, is this just kind of nerds me out a little bit. Is there's when we're shown the scene of the robotic protectors in Gotham, they're chasing down a gang of kids, and they're designed to look like the kids from Bad Albert. Like it's real funny to me. It's like Alex Ross just does that. He'll put in these little homages and these little things they're just kind of funny, and it's just great little Easter eggs because I remember when I reading it, it's kind of like these kids kind of remind me of the kids from Fat Albert.
Yeah,
And
speaking of that, I'm pretty sure the people, at least some of the people in Norman's parish, I'm pretty sure that's George Bush and his wife.
yeah,
Was it Martha?
yeah.
Of course, it's Martha. But I'm pretty sure those are two of the people there. I don't know who the other two are. I don't recognize them. But I mean, I'm like 99.9% certain that George and Martha Bush are in his congregation. Um, and let's talk a little bit about Alex Ross's art. He's an interesting artist because he uses models for his drawings, and he's used like the same people throughout all of his times of drawing different things. And but I love the way he draws them. Like Superman has this really large frame, but one of the always kind of funny things with superhero uniforms and costumes is that they're skin tight, so you can see all muscle definitions. He doesn't do that. The cloth of Superman's costume reads like actual cloth. So as the cloth goes over his stomach, you can't tell he has like a 12 pack, because I mean, he's Superman, he's going to have a 12 pack. I kid, I don't actually really know, but one of the other things I love is that Wonder Woman is not this toothpick. I mean, she's a full figured woman. I mean, she's beautiful in this drawing, but she's not like someone that looks like her arms or legs are going to get snapped in half if you give her a high five, as some former Wonder Woman uh, artists have made her look, and that it just go completely against what she should look like as an Amazon warrior. Um, and yeah, so that, and the body shapes of everyone, I mean, it's just so diverse. I mean, Alex Ross nailed the art on this, like the character drawings, like you're sharing about Superman's face, that disdain of being called Clark. I mean, the acting that goes on in his artwork is just gorgeous and full on realized, and expresses things. Like, you could probably read this story without any captions or dialogue, and he does such a good job of acting with these characters that you could probably get a decent idea of what's going on without them. But don't do that. Read it with the words, because Mark Waid's story in this is awesome.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I was reading some of the extra materials. This was actually a story that was pitched by Alex Ross to DC, and DC was like, "Well, let's get you." And he was like, "But I need a writer." He was like, "I can give you a general idea, but I need a writer." And so they're like, "Let's get you Mark Waid." And Mark Waid wasn't as big of a name yet at the time that this was being done and getting prepared. And so then Mark helped write the story and develop it from Alex's just short pitch. And so it was really good. And so one of the things that I found interesting was that you see Norman walk by a collector's store, and it is very reminiscent to Back to the Future Part 2, when Marty's in the future, and there's just like, here's some old stuff from the past that you can buy. And so, like, there's a collector's store of the baseball from the last World Series that happened in 2002. And I'm like, wow, how crazy is that? And then he walks into the Planet Krypton restaurant that apparently was run by Booster Gold. And you find that out because the person who says, "Hey, tell him B's here." B is Fire from the Justice League International days. So they were partners. They were part of that Justice League team during Justice League International. That's another great comic run that everyone should check out. There's some great, phenomenal stuff in that. And then in the restaurant, you see Green Lantern, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Flash, Supergirl, Robin, and I'm going to call him this for this series. I mean, we just need to make sure that we're straight on this. Captain Marvel. Not Carol Danvers, but the Billy Batson Captain Marvel, who is now known by the moniker of Shazam. He is Captain Marvel to me forever and always, but just also for the sake of this series, we'll call him Captain Marvel, because that's who he is in this. He's not Shazam yet. Anywho, these are all people dressed as these heroes, and they are the wait staff in this superhero themed restaurant. There's replicas on display all over the place. Some of my favorites were the boxing glove Arrow and Adam West's Batsuit. I don't know. Did you see that?
Oh yeah.
In the back, that was awesome. And then there's some replicas of like bat planes and other things like that.
Like a spaceship that Superman came in on. Yeah, there's just a whole bunch of stuff. And then the other, like, one of the things too that I like about in the walking by the memorabilia thing is, you'll see like behind the mask, you can't quite make out the name, but it's supposed to be Jesse Chambers, which is she's Jesse Quick.
Mhm.
So it's just kind of like showing like some of the stuff that, other heroes have gone on to do is they've gone on and, they read, writing tell-all books and this sort of stuff. And um so yeah, so there's just these all these nice little things too. And it's like, you know, and then even, it's like when they're building the world, it's like what the world's like at this time too is just, it's really cool. It's like, the Daily Planet has this article coming out, like the UN enacts more meta-human censures, and its pollable censures curb meta-human violence. 91% of the population say no. um so it's just like the world that they build, it's like, it's honestly, it's not that hard to believe that this is how the world would be. This is what like the world would be like if we've had superheroes for, let's say 40 years, um 40, 50 years, that to the point where when you're starting to get into these second, third generation heroes, and there really aren't quote unquote super villains anymore that they're supposed to go after, you know what are they going to do? They've got all this power. Well, they're going to fight each other. And so it's just these like some really cool stuff. And and one thing too to kind of just discuss a little bit too is, and he's briefly mentioned, and we'll get more into his story into the later issues of the story, but Magog is introduced as the uh where, it's one of the things that they talk about in this book is that the generation of heroes of like Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, Green Lantern, Flash, they all took their cue from Superman. In this world, they take their cue from Magog, and they've taken on a more brutal form of justice that they talk about, and we'll know more about what he's like, and especially in the next issue. And so it's just, so he's the new Magog is like the new Superman. And so it's just some really cool stuff that's in this world that I would highly recommend you read this series, because it's a great read. And in fact, it's I've neglected this series. This is something that I used to read probably once a year, and not that it would take all that long to read because it's only 4 issues, but I read it probably about once a year. And it's been years since I've read it. And in preparation for this, reading it, it brought back so much. And it's just like, oh my gosh, this is just so good. And very, like, I just enjoy it so much.
Yeah. One of the things that they just kind of going along that lines that they've teased about Magog. Another thing that they've teased is that Norman mentions that there's something that happened at a trial that caused Superman to go into exile. Now, one of the things that they talk about, and that Diana and Clark talk about, is that he's lost his parents, and apparently he's also lost Lois. And Clark says, like, well, they're Earthlings, they die. And so this is really showing about, I mean, Superman has really lost his humanity. Like, I mean, he's quote unquote saying that he does not care about Lois's death. And I mean, for anyone who is a big fan of Superman or superheroes in general, every superhero cares about any death that has happened. So this just goes to show how much he's fallen, or fallen away from his humanity, that he doesn't care about his human side anymore. I mean, he referred to them as Earthlings, and so he's going full on Kryptonian in all of this. And so we'll find out more about what this trial was that led to Superman's
But
exile.
but how Kryptonian is he really if he's using the fortress to recreate a farm in Kansas?
That's true, but that's
So
going to be explored and
yeah,
that and
but that's just a nice little tease for our listeners to, it's like, yes, they're trying to make it seem like he's losing his humanity, but has he really? um so we'll see, we'll delve more into that too. And I'll tell you, I'll tell you, probably outside of the opening scene where you're seeing the apocalyptic vision of how the world is coming to an end and the fire and that sort of stuff. I'll tell you, I think the most impressive thing is this floating emerald city that Alex Ross drew, that Green Lantern is um, reside himself into, creating this floating space fortress and waiting for a potential threat from the stars that never comes. But it is absolutely gorgeous. Just I think you would agree with him, Patrick.
Yeah, it's
it's
very
beautiful.
impressive. Yeah, so we'll take screenshots of this, and we'll definitely get the Emerald City, and then probably some other panels, and share that with y'all. And hopefully they'll be up either around the time of this recording coming out, or a little bit before, maybe a little bit afterwards. It's just going to kind of depend on schedules and whatnot. And so because this artwork you need to see it. We cannot emphasize this enough.
Yeah. So it's just and yeah, this is just such a great book, and something that I strongly encourage you to read. It's just there's something to it that it's so, in a world that is the extraordinary, and the fact that all these people have these superpowers and special abilities, but there's just something very grounded about it. And this first issue is setting it up to be wonderful. And then like the teasing of like turning Norman into one of the witnesses from, like, in Revelation. So there are definitely some very strong ties in this book, in these series of books, to the book of Revelation, and we'll touch on those here in a little bit. But it's a phenomenal read, and it's something that I strongly encourage you guys to read, and try and find some of the little Easter eggs. And I'm sure, and I know I missed some, and we haven't discuss all of them. Some of it is we want you to find them yourselves when you read it. But definitely feel free to email us and be like, oh yeah, I saw this Easter egg, and this little gem here. And it's like, because I'm sure there's stuff that, even though I've read this book probably 100 times or something, I still miss stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, if we want to have this podcast be at a decent length, we can't go over every single Easter egg that we see. I mean, we can't even go through every single character that has just been introduced right now, because it literally would take too much time. And especially since a lot of them, and here's the beauty of this. You see all these characters that have been created, and they've got the design that went into them, who their parent, like, especially this first issue, these are like the children and grandchildren of former heroes that you mostly see. And so they have their parents chosen, they have their personalities developed, their motivations, all this, just for side characters that most of them don't even have dialogue,
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just amazing. So
like we were saying, this particular issue opens up with an amazing scene of just, you're seeing an eagle and a bat fighting, and then you'll see a hand of lightning and amongst destruction and flames. And but it opens with and it kind of picks around a few different verses from Revelation, but the particular verse that they use to kind of set up what happens in this particular issue, especially with what happens in Kansas, is from Revelation 16 verse 18. And there were voices and thunders and lightnings, and there was a great earthquake, such as what not since men were upon the earth, so mighty an earthquake and so great. And that's from the King James version, and that's the verses that they use throughout the book. Is the King James version, but it's just that, the great explosion causing destruction. Uh, it's going to greatly affect the economy of the world. Just what's happened in Kansas. So it's some beautiful stuff, and that they choose to pull from
Yeah.
Revelation.
And so even the disaster that happens in Kansas, even though it fits into this motif of destruction, the earthquake that is being even mentioned is might not even, there might be even a greater earthquake coming, because as we see from Norman at the very end, the uh the disaster is still coming, because they thought it was Superman coming back that would solve everything. No, apparently Superman coming back is still a part of this. So there's potentially, and which, as we find out, because it would be a very boring series if it wasn't, there's an even greater disaster coming. And so this is, the book of Revelation is this book full of imagery and metaphor and examples of things to come. And I'm not going to get into the whole thing of Revelation, because once again, that will take too long,
Yeah.
at least to do it well. And
To
so,
do Revelation justice, you need a lot of time. And because the other thing too with Revelation is that you can't just use Revelation for just telling you what's going to happen in the future. That's honestly, that's actually not the point of Revelation, or not the entire point. There, you have to, if we're to truly do Revelation justice, we would need to come at it at multiple different angles on and how it's referencing different things that we just don't have time for.
yeah. And so this is, one of those times where it's really good to study it and really look into everything that goes on. But one of the things that we also wanted to talk about was that throughout this, and Norman really references one, and he says, "Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth." But he says, like, but God never or he doesn't really say God, but that they never mentioned them. What about the mighty?
Mm-hmm.
And so we're kind of want to look at the Beatitudes. It's part of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. The Beatitudes are some of Jesus' most famous teachings. And so it says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." So this is from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, verse 3 through 12. And in the Beatitudes, Jesus is he's the epitome of countercultural. He says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." What poor in spirit person thinks that they're going to get the kingdom of heaven? Nobody. Blessed are the people who are mourning, because they'll be comforted. When you're mourning, a lot of the times you feel dead inside. You feel nothing but pain and anguish,
Mm-hmm.
but you're
And
going to be
it's all
comforted.
well. And the other thing is too, is you think about, it's like most of us at some point or another have mourned something, whether it's the loss of a loved one, or losing something that was important to you, all sorts of things. And think about when people have tried to comfort you, and how little that affects you at all. If and it might even make it worse, because there unfortunately there are a lot of times that uh, people don't know how to comfort. In all honesty, is actually part of the problem. And so when they're trying to comfort you, they say all these like cliched things, and not understanding the pain, or empathizing with the pain that you're in. So they just say all these like cliched, overused statements that have no meaning and actually don't bring you comfort. But what Jesus is trying to tell you is that move past all of that. When you are mourning, you will be comforted by me. You will find comfort in me.
Hmm. And so then, Norman specifically mentions, blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. And especially with the idea of these rampaging, quote unquote, heroes. Uh, I mean, Norman does a better job of caring for the civilians than they do. And then
Mm-hmm.
he only saves one person. Uh, and and so that's telling you how bad of heroes they actually are. And uh, and so this is one of those things where um, we've got to look at these kind of characteristics and the way Jesus is telling us to live our lives in these beatitudes, and then we see this to the heroes that are protecting the city as they say, like, well, we're your protectors, so be grateful. uh you're not living as our protectors. You're living as raging monsters that need to be stopped by real heroes. And uh and so that, of course, that's what leads to a lot of these issues. But I don't want to jump too much ahead, because I mean, it's just going to be so cool. So we do. So once again, if you do not own this and you want to follow along with us, get these comics either digitally or from your comic book store, um, and read along with us. But don't skip ahead. Like, read each issue with us. That would be awesome. Um, and so you can really kind of soak it all in. Let this soak in. Um, and so these attitudes that Jesus tells us to have, these heroes don't have. And so it's one of those things that's important for us as Christians and as followers of Jesus Christ, that these actions, this way of life that the Beatitudes tells us, is so important for us on how we view the world, how we look at it. Because it's a cliche statement, but I believe it to be true. We are to be in the world, not of the world. And for us to be in the world but not of the world, being having our life live like the Beatitudes, is an important thing for us to do.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, and definitely, and check out the rest of the Beatitudes, and just how these were revolutionary at the time, and just how much they changed the way people looked at the world. And we need to be the same when it comes to, it's like one of the things that unfortunately has started to kind of creep into American Christianity or Western Christianity is the health and wealth gospel, and the idea that, well, the more that you have, it means God has blessed you, and that means you're doing something right. Well, that's not always necessarily the case, especially when you truly look at Jesus' teachings. He tells you that you're going to be poor. There's going to be poorness to your spirit. You're going to mourn, um, and to show mercy, and all these other things. And you look at the rest of Jesus' teachings as well. Um, the idea that you're healthy and wealthy absolutely does not mean that you're following God or God's blessed you. Um, it could. There's definitely that possibility, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're on the right path. And in fact, Jesus tends to tell us, is like, well, the wealthier you are, the harder it is for you to get into the kingdom of heaven. Um, so it's something, when it comes to following Christ, that we have to remember that, it's you're gonna stand out. You're gonna be different. But embrace it. So it's just like with verse 11, blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecute the prophets who were before you. So it's going to happen to you as well. So embrace it, and do it, and just recognize that if you're going to truly follow Christ, you're going to stand out. You're going to be different. But that's not a bad thing. You're following Christ.
Yeah. And so we're going to take the time to rate this issue. And unlike My Hero Academia, there's probably not going to be a whole lot of varying in ratings for this miniseries, because it's just so wonderful.
I give it a 5. Actually, can I give it a 6 out of 5? I mean, is that allowed?
Sure.
Because the world that's built in this first issue, the artwork, it's absolutely phenomenal. Like I just love this. I love this series. I love this first issue. I mean, even though there's not necessarily like a whole lot of quote unquote superhero action, I'll tell you, this first issue will hook you. You'll be like, oh, I got to know what happens next. I got to know.
Well, just so you know, the ratings are worthless in our own opinion. So if you want to give it a 6 out of 5, you're welcome to give it a 6 out of 5. I'm going to go 4.75. I'm going to say just shy of being perfect, because I don't know. It's kind of like a gut reaction that I don't know if there could have been anything more perfect in a first issue, but it's also it's still a first issue.
You need to take it from that perspective. Like, think of it as this is just a first issue. You don't know anything else that's coming. Just think of it from this perspective, Patrick. You've only read this first issue, and now you have to wait a month for issue 2. How has this first issue not been amazing? It's just there's nothing about it that you would change, because it has set everything up. There is action in it. There's not a whole lot of like quote unquote super exciting stuff, but you got to think about, you're seeing these heroes destroying maliciously a bridge and a city block, and then also you see these weird heroes just explode and cause Kansas to be wiped off the face of the earth. Yeah. And something has happened that has caused Superman to retreat from the world, as well as the other staples in the superhero community. Okay. The Aquaman, the Superman, the Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, Flash, they've all retreated. What's going on? What happened? I need to know more.
Right. Well, and okay, you want my reason? I came up with one.
Okay.
So it's 4.75 because other than Magog, we don't know the name of any of these other heroes. And which we do find that out, but that's in compendium information. So it's not in this actual issue. So I have a general idea, because I know they're the children and grandchildren of heroes. I can kind of put 2 and 2 together on some of them, but some of them, I have no clue who they are. And so that's kind of annoying.
Really? Hey, that sounds like nitpicking.
Hey, you know what? You wanted a reason. You couldn't just be happy with the fact that, once again, these ratings are meaningless, and they're just for fun. And so,
no, unacceptable.
Well,
because here's the thing too, is that you go back and listen to the tape. You even said They came up with all of this stuff for all these characters that don't even have dialogue in it. You're not supposed to necessarily get super invested in some of these characters. The ones that
Yep.
you are supposed to get invested in, you will get invested in. You'll know more about them and what they say.
But once again, you're talking about if this is the only issue, I don't know who's going to be important and who's going to be a role. And so if I can't name them, then I can't say I'm going to be attached to them.
Maybe they're going to get named in issue 2, 3, or 4.
Yeah, but it's not in issue 1. So, okay, it's 4.75. That's my personal rating, how I view this issue. It's a fantastic issue. If I was when I read this trade for the very first time, I did not wait to, I was like, okay, I'll wait to read issue 2 another time. No, I read the whole thing all at once because issue 1 is so great. But I didn't know who any of these people were yet. And I would like to know who they were in the beginning. I mean, it doesn't take a whole lot other than just a small caption over someone by them saying, this is so-and-so, this is so-and-so, those kind of things. Like one of them is, I think her name's Nightfire. She's the daughter of Starfire and Nightwing. That's kind of cool. That could be done, but whatever. So 4.75.
You guys can't tell in the recording, but I'm rolling my eyes at him.
Yeah, and you can't tell in the recording. I don't care.
All right. So anybody that's listening with us, if you have any questions about any of the biblical lessons that we're talking about, or anything that we talk about specifically in this episode, or any other discussions that we might have, we've tackled stuff from anime, comics, TV shows, all that good stuff. Feel free to email us at frickityfractalkback@gmail.com or reach out to us on our social media. On Twitter, we are at frickityf, and on Instagram, we are at frickityfrac, and that is also our page on Facebook as well.
Join us at the same bat time at the same bat channel next week for Kingdom Come Part 2, and know that you are loved by God and by us. See you next week.